Every couple weeks, I get a text message from one of you, a parent of one of our young children, that usually goes something like, "My child asked me this seemingly simple yet profoundly deep and complicated question about God, and I said to them, that sounds like a Rabbi Berezin question to me." Sometimes those questions sound a little bit like, "My kid's really into Greek gods and wants to know why we can't worship at the Parthenon. Send help." Or, "Today, so-and-so yelled at me for killing a spider in our kitchen because evidently spiders are God's creatures too. But the bugs and we can't cohabitate, so I don't want to move. And I said that question's above my pay grade. You have to talk to Rabbi Berezin. Good luck." Sometimes they sound a little bit different. "So-and-so was watching Spider-Man the other day and asked me why God created villains in the first place. I'm sending him to you for that one." And still other times, they sound a little something like, "Our dog just died. My kids want to know if pets go to heaven to live with God. What do I say?" As a kid who once upon a time had a lot of big questions of her own, I say with complete and utter sincerity that I absolutely adore when you reach out to me with your questions or choose to send your kids to me to help find answers. It's a tremendous gift of trust that I don't take for granted. And what's more, the questions that our kids ask as they try to integrate what it is they've learned about Judaism and about God with their lived experiences in a particular moment can give us unparalleled insight into what they're trying to make sense of as they encounter this big, wide world around them. Their questions, whether they're silly or serious or somewhere in between, really give me tremendous hope for the future because they mean that our kids are deeply spiritual thinkers with important questions, and our job as the grown-ups in their lives isn't to help them find the answers, it's to help them find their own answers. Our children, this next generation of Jews, deserve full and thoughtful answers to their questions. We owe them responses that honor the sincerity and the perceptiveness of their queries with answers of equal depth and candor. So today, on one of our holiest days of the year, that's what I want to spend some time thinking about with you. But for most of us, talking about God is really hard because finding the right words to talk about something that we can't see or hear or touch is challenging for everyone, no matter how old we are. And it's hard because our language simply falls short. Our metaphors can only go so far in describing something that by definition defies description. Translating that for our children can sometimes feel beyond our reach. And at the same time, Judaism teaches that there is no one right answer and no one right way to understand God. And we each get to determine for ourselves what it is that we believe. So I can't tell you what you should believe, and I can't tell you what you should tell your children when they come to you with their keen insights of the world and their heartfelt questions. So instead, I'm going to share a piece of myself with you in the form of a series of letters to the children of our congregation, with the kind of answers that I hope one day not to give only to my own children, but to all of our children as they begin to wonder. Letter 1, for when we need the miracle. Good morning, my sweet friends. Today I got a message from one of your parents letting me know that your grandpa has been sick for a while now. And you asked your mom why God isn't making him better. God is all powerful, right? God can make miracles happen. Where's our miracle, you wondered? How I wish that I had an easy answer for this one. How I wish I could tell you not to worry, that Grandpa will get better, and that the miraculous cure is right around the corner. But I can't, because miracles are tricky things. When we read the Torah, we read about this all-powerful God who can create human beings from the dust of the earth, who can rain down plagues from Egypt to free us from our oppressors, and who splits the sea apart so that we can march forward on dry land. We read about how Moses cried out to God to heal his sister Miriam. El na rafana la, God, please heal her now. And God did. Through the words of Torah and all of the stories that we've taught you, you've come to know a God that is capable of grand, sweeping miracles, and that we can see that our prayers have succeeded when that miracle, a miracle which may defy the laws of nature and science, because that is the kind of power that God can wield in these moments, actually comes to be. And if those are the only examples that we've given you about how God works in this world, I can see why you would think that if Grandpa doesn't get better, it means our prayers aren't working. But friends, your prayers are working, because our prayers do work and miracles do come into this world every single day. They just look a little bit different sometimes than how we see them in Torah. So I want to tell you a story about a miracle in my life, a time that I prayed to God for healing, because I understand that prayer, and I think we all do. Who among us doesn't plead with God for our loved one to be that 1 in a million odds-defying miraculous case? When it came to my grandma Shirley, I did. Just like you, I saw my grandma get sicker and sicker, and I begged God to heal her. I prayed just like Moses. El na refana la, God, please heal her. I prayed even though I knew rationally that for her, a miraculous recovery would be impossible. And still I pleaded. My grandmother suffered from Alzheimer's, a particularly cruel disease that takes people away from their current realities, sweeping them into chaos and confusion and stealing their memories. And month after month, we saw my grandmother get sicker and sicker, becoming less and less like the person that I'd grown up with. At a certain point, she couldn't remember me or my siblings. She couldn't even remember her own children. And yet, some things didn't change, even as the disease ravaged her body. She still loved to see me even when she couldn't quite place who I was to her. She still joyfully agreed to endless silly face photo shoots, and she still beat me at Scrabble every single time we played. An English teacher at heart, her love of words and language was evergreen. And that, my sweet friends, that was the miracle. My miracle came in the gift of time, sacred time that I had with my grandma, time that allowed me to be with her through her illness and to say goodbye in my own way. The miracle came in singing Misha Berach with her night after night. In person, I would feel her squeeze my hand as she felt the power of those words. Over the phone, I would hear her softly hum as some part of her recognized the power of that prayer. And in those moments, I felt God. I felt my prayer working. I was living the miracle. It may not have looked like the miracle that Miriam received in the Torah, but the miracle was there. I asked for healing, but what I really meant was comfort. Comfort for my grandma to ease her suffering, and God answered with doctors to help her see her through her pain, and comfort for me when I needed to let her go. What I later came to realize is that in the moment that I turned to God to plead for healing, what I also needed was to feel a sense of intimacy with a God who knows me, who knows my family, who knows my story. Misha Berach avotenu v'imotenu, our God and God of our mothers and fathers, we pray. God who makes miracles happen, do something to ease our pain. Give us our miracle. And I think that God often does. So here's the secret, my sweet friends. The trick with miracles is that sometimes they're hiding in plain sight. But if you know where to look, you can most certainly find them. Letter 2, for when we feel insignificant. Shalom, dear ones. Yesterday I heard that some of you are feeling a little bit lost in this great big world of ours, and you're asking some really important questions about your place in it. You learned that God created the entire universe, the sun, the moon, and the stars, the birds in the sky and the fish in the sea, the plants and the trees, animals of all kind, and all of the people who walk this world with us. And if God created all of that, you wonder, does God care about me? Do I even matter? What beautiful questions, friends. I love how your minds work and how you're so easily able to cut through the noise to get through the very heart of some of life's biggest questions. As you begin to recognize the vastness of creation, it is only natural to ask, how is it possible that God can really know each and every one of us? with so many people that God has to care about, how is it even possible that God cares just about me? It's possible, dear ones, because God is infinite, and as God creates, God also expands. God's love isn't like a pie that only has so many pieces before it's gone. It grows as we grow, and there is always enough to go around. Yes, God created the world and all of the people in it, but God also created every person in the divine image with divine purpose. And we are not the first people to wonder about our place in this universe. The rabbis of the Mishnah teach us that sometimes in our lives we will feel small and we will feel insignificant. And in those moments, we should remind ourselves that for my sake, the world was created. God knows us and God sees us because God created this world for us. We can share anything and everything that's in our hearts with God. But more than that, we're actually supposed to. God asks it of us. And we see evidence of that scattered through every one of our sacred texts. People reaching out to God to share their most intimate needs. We yearn and we plead and we bargain. We are angry and we're frustrated and we're let down. We're joyful and we are grateful and inspired. And God's heart is capacious enough to hold all of it. In Lamentations, we mourn the destruction of our holy places. And we cry out to God, Echa, how can this be? The book of Job is one of righteous anger and abandonment and blame. And Psalms plead with God to listen. Hear, God, my cry, attend to my prayer. They give voice to every single human emotion there is. We hear the despair and the anger and the pain right alongside the gratitude and praise and hope, and so does God. As part of your education, we teach you to pray. And we most often do it by helping you learn about the prayers that you find on the pages of your Sidurim. But I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Those aren't actually the most important prayers we offer. Because God doesn't only want the prayers that someone else has put on a page for us. God yearns to hear what we call our avodah shabalev, the unscripted, personal, private prayers of our innermost hearts. The ones that we leave space for in every single service, because our prayers are not complete without them. The fixed prayers have always been only one part of the equation. The other part comes from inside us. When we pray, we're reminded we should not make our prayer routine, but rather a plea for compassion before God. And in some ways, the entirety of our prayer service leads us to that moment where we lay our hearts bare before God. My friends, we are far from insignificant. So remember, sometimes we might feel invisible in the vastness of this universe, but we're not trivial. We were created by a God whose love knows no bounds, and we are called to share the breadth and the depth of our emotions with a God who wants to know us as fully as we want to be known. Letter 3, for when the worst happens. Today is a hard day, my sweet friends. One of you lost someone special, your bubby. You're feeling lost, swept away in this sea of grief that you don't fully understand because how can you? And we have to figure out what it means to live in a world where Bubby can't make her famous pancakes and you can't drop by for an extra special hug when you need it. My heart hurts, you told your mom. What's the point of believing in a God that would let Bubby die? I wish that I could spare you this pain, dear one. I would take it for you in a heartbeat if I could. I wish that we could have protected you from the harshness of life for just a little bit longer and given you more time before you had to confront the notion of mortality. I can't tell you why some lives are long and some are short. I can't tell you when you'll stop hurting, but I can tell you this. You are not alone because God is always with you. God is with us through every moment of our lives, and right now, God is crying alongside you. When someone that we love dies, our hearts break wide open, and it sometimes feels that they'll never be quite the same. And the truth is they might not be. And that's okay because it means that we've loved deeply. And that kind of love, it changes us. I know you feel alone right now because Bubby isn't with you. But she didn't abandon you. You keep a piece of her in your heart even though it hurts right now. And God didn't abandon you either. I can understand why you might feel that way, because it feels like God should be able to make the pain go away, or at least give you a reason for why Bubby had to leave you before you're ready. But sometimes, belief isn't about having the answers. It's about taking comfort in something greater than ourselves. Just like you, I have lost people that I love dearly. When my great-uncle Jack passed away just a few weeks before my wedding, my heart broke. Uncle Jack was like a grandpa to me, and his thoughtful and gentle presence in my life was a steadying force that I could always count on. When he died, I felt a gaping hole in my heart, and I desperately yearned to fill it. Years later, I would help to fill it by naming my child, my Jack, after my uncle. As those tears fell in the initial first days, I looked to the words of our tradition that reminded me that the gates of tears are never locked. And I echoed King David's pleas that God give ear to my cry and not keep silence at my tears. But even I, a rabbi who had officiated at many funerals, didn't know where to find God amidst my pain. To my surprise, I found the God that I needed in the words of Psalm 23. The words that I had recited countless times before, but when I encountered them as a mourner amidst my own grief, I heard them differently. At that moment, I needed a God who was walking this long and winding path with me, and that's exactly what I found in that psalm. I was reminded that God is so much more than the judge we read about in our High Holy Day liturgy, deciding from on high who lives and who dies and who will be sealed in the book of life. God is also our shepherd, our compassionate presence who leads us to places of serenity, to imagine meadows thick with grass. In that peaceful place, we can unburden ourselves and put our trust in a loving God who cares deeply for us, a God who will shepherd us through the pain, giving us what we need most in that moment, and we lack for nothing. Sometimes, though, grief weakens us and brings us low, and that meadow of serenity might feel too distant to access. In those moments, we feel the darkness descend, and we find ourselves walking through the valley of the shadow of death, and that feels scary and dangerous. We're lost and afraid, unable to see through the shadows. But even then, God is right by our side, a quiet and steadying presence in the dark. And suddenly, the dark isn't so scary, and we don't need to fear evil because God is with us. And if we remember to look, we'll see the signs of God all around us. When I was in the valley of the shadow of death, I saw God's rod and God's staff, and they comforted me. And if you ever start to feel the darkness of shadows, my sweet friends, reach out, because I think you'll find it too. Death is not easy. It is perhaps the hardest part of living. And if you remember nothing else, I pray that you remember this: you are never alone. Letter 4, for the grown-ups. Shalom and Shana Tova, friends. What a joy it is to teach your children, to teach our children, the next generation of Jews who will write the next chapter of our Jewish story. I am in awe of the wisdom of their minds and the love in their hearts every single day, and I consider it the greatest gift to be one of their rabbis. Every time I encounter our young people, I become more and more certain that children are as spiritually sophisticated as adults, perhaps even more so because they don't have to navigate their way around the spiritual blockages that so many of us have built up through our lives. In the absence of those limitations, their innate sense of curiosity and wonder can flourish, free from the self-imposed boundaries. But the truth is, as much as our children deserve these kinds of candid conversations with opportunities to discover their own answers, so do we. And it's not easy. Talking about God is hard, and it's made harder by the likelihood that our beliefs have evolved throughout our lives, and we may not yet have had the motive or the opportunity to do our own spiritual work. So my friends, consider this your invitation. My door, our doors, are always open. Gemar Chatzima Tova.